So I think as it pervasives and you gain trust in your personal use of these tools, it's easier to trust it making business decisions or aiding in business decisions, right? It's making your personal life better. So of course it's going to make your business life better.
Without supplies, there's no surgery. Without products, there's no patient care. Welcome to Power Supply, the healthcare supply chain podcast focused on helping you navigate the intricacies of logistics, purchasing, contracting, and supplier relationships. Each episode, we speak with healthcare executives, supply chain leaders, and innovative entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the loading dock to strategic sourcing, from buyers to the C-suite and across the enterprise, we tackle the real-life issues impacting the healthcare supply chain. Whether you're tuning in for conversation or inspiration, we're glad you're here. You're just in time to hear it from the source and stock up on insight. So sit back and plug into Power Supply.
On this episode of Power Supply, we will speak with David Newton. He's the Senior Vice President of Customer and Product Success at Handle, and he's an AI expert. He'll also tell us about his podcast, so stay with us. We're going to be back. He's going to be helping you manage AI fatigue with a trust but validate approach, because there's a lot of AI coming at us. As he'll tell you in this interview, he has over 200 tech-enabled AI solutions that he's constantly playing with. So it can be hard to sift through all of that and figure out what you need and what you can use, but he's going to help us with that in our conversation today. So stay with us. After a short break, we'll be back with David Newton.
I'm Hayes Walder.
This is Gary Skinner.
And I'm Justin Poulin.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Power Supply.
Joining me now is David Newton, Senior Vice President of Customer and Product Success at Handle. And he's an AI expert, which is the topic today. And he's also a podcaster. So we're going to hear all about that in today's episode. David, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Justin, thank you so much for having me. I've been a long-time listener of Power Supply, actually. So really excited to be here.
Well, I can't wait to hear about your podcast, I should say, I can't wait for you to tell everybody about your podcast. But before that, just talk about your background, your role at Handle, and how you kind of got to where you are in your career today.
Yeah, happy to. So like you mentioned, SVP of Product, Customer Success, and a few other initiatives at Handle, which is a healthcare supply chain company helping hospitals replace pieces of capital equipment at the right time for the right price, etc. Before joining Handle, my whole career has been in B2B SaaS companies. So I actually helped turn around a company called Atania, which is the leader in equipment planning technology. I was part of a search fund that bought that in 2016, helped kind of reshape that organization. And before that was part of two other B2B larger e-commerce data companies, one backed by Vista Equity and one backed by Drive Capital. So really excited about the big data space, transition to healthcare in 2017 and kind of never left. I'll probably never leave the healthcare space.
I really love healthcare. And I think, part of it's because I was a clinician before I got into sales and now, podcasting and leading another company in the credentialing space. And I think there's just so much opportunity and there's a lot of change going on too, because there's not only in supply chain, but also clinical leaders are there was an influx and many of those workers are hitting retirement age now. And so how do we empower the next generation of healthcare professionals? It just makes this a fun environment to be in, because I feel like we're on the precipice of just intense learning and really just knowledge share that I feel like the internet, which is kind of an old innovation to us now, but really empowered self-learning at a new level.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And that's kind of been the story of my career. I got into tech in 2013. I joined my first health software company. Before that, I played music for a living. And my whole career has just been kind of like self-paced learning the space I was in, right? At my first company, I was literally paying people at the company to go to lunch with me and teach them about their roles. Like I'd pay developers to go to lunch or product people just to eat up everything. And fortunately now with tools like ChatGPT and everything else on the internet, you can learn without having to pay for people's food. So that's pretty exciting, I think, for the next generation.
I think so. It's okay. So you said you played music for a living. So I've got a guess here. Your personality to me says lead guitarist and singer, but for some reason my brain was telling me you played bass. So you gotta tell me.
Yeah, actually you're semi-right on both. So I started playing bass in high school. And in my first band that signed to Rise Records when I was 20, I played guitar and then transitioned to a lead guitar on another band on Atlantic Records in 2012 or so. So mostly guitar, but super passionate about all things production, etc.
Okay. Well, I loved music. I definitely never played on that level, but I can see the carryover to podcasting. So why don't you tell all the listeners about your podcast? Because it's a great show.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Justin, for the plug about Canopy. So we started Canopy because I think the exact message you said about kind of new leaders coming into the space, I think the conference circuit for the past, 10 years since I've been in healthcare have been a lot of the same amazing voices talking about the innovation they're driving at, the health system they're either at currently or where they have been. And my goal with Canopy is to tie into more of the middle manager or upcoming leaders and kind of share interesting stories that they're working on. A lot of these conferences you're typically hearing from a VP of supply chain or, CFO or someone at the highest level. My goal is really to use it as a mechanism to connect with, the up and coming generation of leaders, as well as some great mentors that I've had in the healthcare space.
That's awesome. All right, everybody, you got to check it out. We can even put a link, to the show on Spotify or whatever in the write up. So David, don't forget to send that over and we'll make sure everybody knows how to find you. The topic today is AI, and as evidenced by many episodes that we've had, whether 100% focused on AI or the fact that the topic leaks into just about every conversation in one way or another, I think people are starting to get a little fatigued with the topic, but you do have to get used to it. It's not going to go away. It's actually going to keep coming at a faster and faster pace. But, people have to manage this. And the topic, the way we've titled this is Managing AI Fatigue, Trust but Validate. Let's start at the beginning. When did you start to get passionate about AI and why?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my journey into really rudimentary AI was at my first tech company ever, a company called Channel IQ. We were basically taking large Excel files of manufacturer data, so like soups from ConAgra brands, right? And then going out scraping the web, and based on the data that the manufacturer was giving us, auto-matching listings on e-commerce sites to the file that was given us. So we were saying, hey, Walmart's selling this soup for 97 cents, but your MAP price is 99 cents. But in the beginning, that was all manual. And then we built something with some Google technology, early Google technology, TensorFlow, to actually map listings. So I've been doing something related to AI for 12 years now or something along those lines, but it's definitely changed in terms of what people think of AI. Certainly not as much as the back end stuff and less intriguing, sexy stuff I was doing 12 years ago.
Well, going back in time a little bit, blockchain was getting a lot of similar dialogue. And this is going to, blockchain's going to change healthcare. And I feel like, that conversation quieted pretty quickly. We can go back to the kind of beginning of that, but ultimately the question I'm asking is, why is AI going to be different? But maybe to understand that, we need to start with, blockchain itself and the vision for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because if you think about every conference that you see now, I mean, back in the day, when I say back in the day, probably like 5 years ago, about 80% of the booths were blockchain companies, right? All pitching kind of different visions, but really the core message was the same, right? And the goal was to kind of create a world where patients own their data, right? Create some sense of immutability with data, and have better data sharing across both healthcare systems and manufacturers, et cetera. Really, the problem with blockchain is where AI is being successful is it didn't solve the core problem, right? It really just added a layer of infrastructure. Healthcare doesn't necessarily have a data sharing problem. In my opinion, it has an incentive problem, right? There's no incentive for competitive systems to be sharing, patient data, et cetera. Same thing with OEMs and hospital systems, right? There's not an incentivized structure for them to be sharing data at high levels. And also, there's always room for adjustment in healthcare records, right? I'm sure you've had my chart and you get an update from your doctor that something changed or a lab result changed or something like that, right? That's not the goal with blockchain, right? There's immutability in blockchain, meaning once a contract signed, right? You're sending money to someone else. That's happened and that's real and that's done, which creates large scale conflicts in healthcare, right? If someone, publishes a chart and they can't go back and edit that chart and it's permanently there, that could create a lot of complications, right?
That's interesting what you just said too. It's like the piece about the silos are baked in to the scenario. And so, the data sharing is totally a possibility. It's the willingness that is the issue, and the fact that it may impact competitive advantages for both providers and suppliers. Yeah. It's a fundamental dynamic I think we have to recognize in this scenario.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's something that at Handle and at my last company, I've really focused on building like an ecosystem between suppliers and hospitals. I kind of started at Titania, but data sharing programs between hospitals and manufacturers to incentivize collaboration, not necessarily, hey, supplier, prospect me every single time you get, an update of something going on. More so, hey, let's sit in a meeting. Let's talk about what a capital structure looks like. Let's talk about what value creation looks like. Because in a lot of cases, it's not just about the product being bought, right? It's the total value provided by either a device or a service or something along those lines. And a lot of times it's hard to get in the room when, supply chain leaders, clinicians, et cetera, are so busy, right? And that's part of the beauty of AI is the goal with AI is to eliminate a lot of that busy work and a lot of back office work. It just has to be implemented in the right way.
Yeah. So, maybe a way to simplify why this might be different, and you can layer onto this, is that, blockchain in some ways exacerbated or made us more aware of some of the inherent challenges. Whereas, one inherent challenge is just having enough bodies and having enough processing power to keep up with the data we do have and do something meaningful with it. Is that why AI is a game changer and probably going to be more pervasive than maybe blockchain for healthcare?
Yeah, spot on. I think what's really interesting at the most simplistic level, it's hard for anyone to create something blockchain related on their own computer that creates value for them right now. But if you're a VP of supply chain, you can go to whatever your LLM, your AI tool of choice and say, what does a patient room look like? Or tell me everything about Stryker. You can feel wins from AI in real time, right? So I think as it pervasives and you gain trust in your personal use of these tools, it's easier to trust it making business decisions or aiding in business decisions, right? It's making your personal life better. So of course it's going to make your business life better.
So I want to get to some best practices, and we've heard some really, kind of simple ones and conversations before, like everybody's constantly focusing on the quality of the data, and are you maintaining that data consistently, and does it have, one of the nightmares is open text fields traditionally in data. And it's still a nightmare, but I actually feel like AI can help us with that a little bit, at least identify what standardization opportunities exist in those open text fields so that we can apply a useful structure to that format potentially. Yep. But let's talk about baseline best practices. Like if you want to do something with AI, what do you need to have and what do you need to keep in mind once you start leveraging AI in your organization?
Yeah, as everyone on your podcast and everyone else in the world is talking about, data is really one of the most fundamental components of it. What's really interesting is constantly retraining your data, right? I think that's something that we do really well at Handle is once you're classifying something, as you get more new information, you have to reclassify that data continuously, right? Because you're learning new information, something that looked like a a certain type of chair now. You've gotten, 1,000 other chairs that look like that same thing. Well, now it's a different type of chair because you have more information. But I think the like more core principle isn't that AI solves all problems for you. You have to do different types of work, and it's a different thought process to make AI work for you, right? I use it for a lot of product management functionality, right? Creating product specs, etc. And part of that is not asking it to write a whole specification for me, but it's able to do different research for me that would be super time consuming, or kind of do a lot of pervasive or monotonous work for me that I can then summarize and put into my new work, right? So I think the more critical thing is reshaping your mind to have kind of like a, how does AI work for me in this setting thought process? The goal shouldn't be to have it do everything for you all the time. It should be understanding or working through, how does this help me solve this problem a little bit more effectively or better? And in some cases, you don't need it at all, right? I know a lot of people that rewrite every single email with, GPT, and they put it in, and that's great. I love that they do that. But you can, if you're a Copilot user or use Grammarly, you get stuff on the fly right away. I mean, also some emails just aren't that important that you need to spend 15 minutes perfecting something. So I think the mindset is really the core principle that a lot of people kind of glance over. It's easy. It's kind of a cop out to say, got to fix your data, right? That's super obvious. But the human component is what's going to make everything work or not work. And the human component's why blockchain, I think it still will eventually be the preferred data mechanism, but I think that's why it didn't work.
You mentioned something that a good friend of the show, Mark Van Summeren, he's been on a lot here, and he recently released a book, and essentially the topic is about the leaders of tomorrow, not just in healthcare, but in all businesses, are going to have to develop with an emphasis on judgment as a skill set because of what AI can bring to us. Is like all of a sudden we can talk about making decisions faster because we can inform ourselves faster. But would you expand on the concept of judgment potentially as maybe how you relate to that and what Mark's concept was that he's brought to the table?
I love that. I'm going to have to check that out because that's certainly something that I align with, because you do see a lot of people kind of taking AI. You'll see people on LinkedIn call it AI slop, taking AI outputs and just throwing it up against the wall, but not necessarily using their best judgment, kind of scrutinizing the data and expanding on it. I like to compare it to the world of design. So there's a lot of people using AI for creative work now, whether that's music or marketing design, etc. And it's not being able to, make the best design in After Effects or Photoshop or whatever tool you use now. Now it's about your taste, right? How elegant can you prompt? What is your vision of something, etc. And I think that's the same thing in regards to judgment of leveraging AI information is how creative is your mind? How spatially of a thinker are you? And can you put together a prompt structure or an output from the AI that's actually meaningful, right? It's less about being able to do the work and, create pivot tables and all that other good stuff. And now more about, can you tell a story that's convincing in an elegant way that creates value?
Man, do I love the tell a story. I mean, I feel like people may have really great ideas, and a lot of times the reason they don't go anywhere is because they have a very hard time telling the story and getting other people to buy into that vision. And so, something that you said that I really loved in there too is how eloquently can you prompt?
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some people that are going to hear that, and it's going to be a real aha for them and their experience with AI to date. If they're newer is, I started using this tool Replit, and you can build apps, but you can also spend a lot of money building the app if you don't really go about it. And you have to play with it to get better and more eloquent at your prompting. So, advice to anybody who's listening is like, if you're going to start playing around with this, just know you're not going to be efficient at it at first. And yet you're still going to be able to do something faster. And you're and you're going to be able to create something you could never have done before. And you'll be able to do it faster than trying to learn, like in that example, how to code. Like nobody's going back to school to learn how to code. But if you prompt eloquently, you may be able to create apps and tools for business intelligence that you never thought were capable without really burdening your IT teams. And I think there's an impact. We're going to have to save this for a part 2 someday. Like understaffing of IS/IT support in healthcare is a real issue. These tools could help really, I'm going to use the term because it's going to take us to the next section of our conversation. It could tech enable supply chains with less, tech capability in their human resources of their IT and IS teams. So there's a difference here, and I want you to define it. Is tech-enabled software is not the same thing as SaaS, and everybody's familiar with software as a service. What's the inherent specific difference between tech-enabled software and traditional SaaS?
Yeah, so really quick, I do want to shout out Replit is my favorite AI tool in the space right now. I use it every day. I'll send over for your users after, your listeners after. I have a whole Replit workflow that takes prompts from GPT to help build better product specs so people don't waste money on stuff and create that value, because I have spent thousands of dollars building stuff on Replit. And with this new structure, I definitely save a lot of money, but it is an amazing solution. Transitioning to tech-enabled services versus traditional SaaS. Handle does a lot of tech-enabled services on a few different fronts. And the core difference is, in a SaaS world, you're giving someone an application, and of course, there's customer success, et cetera, in a lot of cases. But you're just expecting, after you build the application and create past ROI, people to be successful in the app and that to drive value, right? Tech-enabled services are things that advisory comes along with the application, and you're helping the user from either an advisory component or engagement component, or maybe it's even data management. We have some hospital systems that, a large part of our offering in the beginning was just fixing all their data, right? So tech-enabled services, we've got a data team. We have a large language model that automatically cleans hospital data from manufacturers, models down to serial number, date, manufacturer stuff. So that would be a tech-enabled services model. And then we transfer them to more of a SaaS model where they're leveraging a budget application and all these other things, right? But I think tech-enabled services will certainly be the future, because everyone's going to be able to build SaaS soon. I mean, they already can with, you said Replit, right? You can build any process tool in the world if you have a deep understanding of it or know how to prompt your way to a deep understanding of it. And what's critical is, how successful can you make a customer with your data? Because as you mentioned, resource confinement from a personnel perspective, you might have the best tool in the world. That doesn't mean a VP of supply chain can create value with it, right? They need guidance, they need help, support, especially if it's making big decisions that are going to save millions, right? They want another, engagement point. That's why these large consulting companies have been so successful, right? They use technology, right, inside their environments. It just might not be exposed to the end user.
When we talked leading up to this podcast, you introduced a concept to me that accurate proprietary data would be the new currency.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And what I mean by that is fully the data that your organization creates and is unique to your organization will be something that drives value. A great example is an organization like ECRI. They have tens of thousands of historical quotes and physical measurements they've done on assets, etc. You can't replicate that, right? That's a data set that is unique to them, that they exist in their environment. GPOs have their own version of it. Handle has our own version of it. I don't want to talk about Handle too much, but that's what makes ECRI unique, right? From the advisor perspective, is they have a subset of data that they can query and they can answer questions on that no one has access to. It doesn't matter what front end they put on it or, anyone else creates. You could create an application that is a same buying guide that any other solution does, but ECRI is going to be unique because of the underlying data they have that is unreplicable.
Yeah, because it's all experience. You just have to have time in the game, and you need to understand, you need to have a deep knowledge of the structure of that data to empower it with AI. Or money to buy it, right? If you could license it from a bunch of people, that's great too. I mean, part of our goal is just to work with as many health systems as possible and get historical PO data and all that other good stuff. So we're building a large data set that you can build pricing benchmarks and so on too. But things like that take time, and that'll be unique, as well. Race to adoption. Okay. As we start to kind of tie up the themes from this podcast, I've got a couple more questions, and they're a little bit higher, kind of visionary, looking forward to the future. But like, what should supply chain leaders be looking for in AI technology today? Just as depending on their level of sophistication, certainly tier that out or whatever, but what's critical that they get?
Yeah. So I think something that I really focus on in talking to leaders, whether it's consulting work I do or subscribing to Handle, is what is the outcome from using this tool in clear language, right? And how do I get to it? What is the actual work required? And what are the steps demonstrating how you create value? There are a lot of AI tools out there that have really great product videos and have great influencers and a ton of things, but the end ROI is kind of fictitious in some ways, right? You can't translate how to get there, or if you can translate how to get there, the numbers are way overstated, right? An example, I work a lot in sourcing. So I show clear math of how, all right, if I show you these insights, you can do these things and save these dollars. And it's simple to understand. I don't have to explain my back office automation or that we're scraping or we're collecting or any of that. That's overselling, and it's kind of unnecessary. Leaders just need to understand from their vendors the most simplistic way of how it drives revenue and how they can do it with adding a whole nother human to their team.
That goes back to telling the story, right? Like how critical it is. And again, the demands on the time. How succinctly or how eloquently can you tell that story? All right. So last question. Lots of solutions tout their AI capabilities, but what do you know? And you were alluding to this already, but what's real and what's valuable? How do you discern that? I feel like you already teed this up, but let's just go to the next level for maybe skill building as they start to get this influx of AI solutions being sold to them.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're seeing AI SaaS companies even advertise on YouTube now, so you can't even watch a video without seeing something new and a tool you should use and something you should change. I think what's critical is understanding what struggles you have or your organization has, and really what's needed to solve them, right? It's really easy to throw in a AI email client or a specific meeting note taker for a specific reason, etc. But really having a justification of actual use cases of specific tools and your goals to drive outcomes helps you track them, right? And make sure that you're selecting the right tool at the right time. Because I think there was a stat I saw maybe from McKinsey, 60% of these AI pilots are failing. And I think it's because there isn't a clear mission statement leading with it. And one other quick example that I love is a lot of companies are now implementing AI SDRs, right? And as someone who's leading sales and, is passionate about it, that's probably something you've been pitched a million times. Well, you're seeing an organization ramp, which is, like $1 billion valuation company. They shut down all of their SDRs because at least this is what we reported, because it wasn't able to effectively sell like someone on their team could. And the reason is, and my hypothesis, is that if you can't tell the story and you can't train an AI SDR to sell, if you don't put in that work to do it, it's not going to sell. It's not a magic solution, right? So understanding the framework and the problem and the challenges and how to solve the challenges and then implementing AI is what's going to make it work. So it's not necessarily the tools, although I do have an affinity for a couple. More so, as I mentioned earlier, that mentality of how to solve problems with AI and thinking through the new way. It's kind of like, everyone's been super passionate about Lean Six Sigma and all that good stuff for years. It's a new thought process of solving challenges and identifying tools, etc. Kind of akin to that mindset.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and you got me spun out. I went down the rabbit hole while you were talking, just thinking about, what would be the progression of AI tools? Because you were like, hey, I could recommend some of my favorites, right? And I see like Gemini is making some real leaps forward lately. And I hadn't really been playing with that one. I'd been mostly playing with ChatGPT and Claude. And then I started playing around with Gemini this weekend. I was like, oh, you can start to do it's like Replit Lite in some of the things that it's allowing you to build now. So it's integrated. It's like a large language model, but it also can start to build some apps and it can start to do some of those things. And so I was sort of thinking to myself, like, what progression should people be on? Like, should they start with like a Gemini and a ChatGPT and play with that? And maybe there's like 3 or 4 things that they could do with that. And then they go to like Replit, and Replit's like, yeah, now that you got those insights out of the large language model, start to build business processes around that and maybe do some dashboarding. And then maybe you're moving on to something like N8N, which is now we're just getting off the rails.
Yeah.
For
we're
folks.
getting intense.
But what does that look like? What is that sort of continuum of experience from a platform standpoint look like? I'm throwing this one in at the end as we close out, but
I love it because it's something I'm super passionate about, and I'm kind of leading a charge at Handle of getting people leveraging AI in different departments for their specific use cases. I think it is largely specific human based. A great example is Perplexity has a browser called Comet. Perplexity is a competitive tool to ChatGPT and Gemini and all those other things. But I've actually helped a lot of our teammates develop shortcuts in Perplexity because they have an agent, and it does really small things like scan your inbox and your calendar every day and tell you emails you forgot, meetings that you have coming up, go research the companies. And it basically gives my customer success managers an email every day of like, if they didn't respond to anything, which my team always responds to everything. If they didn't respond to anything, what those emails are, if they have meetings coming up with external parties, who's in the meeting? Is there any news about them? What's new with the health system, etc. So I think, honestly, the best way for people who aren't super passionate about AI is building things like that for them so they can see how it makes their life easier. And then they say, oh, can I add this to it? And then you say, yep, here's the prompt, or here's a shortcut key, go work on it. For people like us who are super passionate, I mean, I just follow a bunch of people on Twitter and I get new tool suggestions every single day. And I've probably signed up for a couple hundred different AI applications, and I'm just testing stuff all weekend, all the time, forever.
Yeah, because then you've got to go back because they get you're like, I can't use this one. They get that feedback, and then they wind up redesigning the tool, and now all of a sudden, maybe it is something that you need.
Yeah,
David,
a lot of these oh, good.
No,
I was going to say,
ahead.
a lot of these early stage AI founders are super eager to get user feedback, and a lot of them are kind of building in near stealth mode, right? So it's a great opportunity to partner with companies at an early stage and actually influence the product, like you just said, right?
David, this has been a phenomenal podcast. We covered a lot of ground on the AI topic, but I feel like we've built on prior conversations around AI and kind of started to push it up into the next level that's already iterating, I think. And to your point, you've got 200 of these. It's iterating so fast that, getting guidance on AI and almost having somebody that is doing that exploration for you. Yeah. And so following people on LinkedIn, I'm sure if people wanted to reach out to you and connect with you on LinkedIn or follow you, they might start to get some of the better apps, the AI tools bubbled up to them so they don't have to go like try to curate their own experience and manage that on a daily basis. Yeah,
100%. So just David Newton on LinkedIn. I think that's my actual URL is linkedin.com/David Newton. I was fortunate to get that one. I post about AI solutions and healthcare supply chain every single day, and do a lot of side work with organizations that are looking to implement different AI technologies or healthcare systems. So if it's something that you're super passionate about and just having a conversation or learning or implementing something at your organization, always happy to have a conversation. Don't be afraid to reach out. I'll get back to everyone as fast as I can.
So speaking of the vanity URL, I got it early enough to get LinkedIn/podcasting. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I'm never letting that one go.
Yeah. Someone will buy that one day. Maybe Dharmesh from HubSpot. He buys a lot of domains.
All right, David, thanks so much for coming on the show. Great job today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin.
That was David Newton, Senior Vice President of Customer and Product Success at Handle. He has a great podcast. Definitely make sure you check that out. We'll have a link over to it. in the description for the episode. He's also, as you could probably tell, an AI expert. What I really liked about this conversation is while it still stayed very high level and visionary, I think we got some actionable ideas and some of the tools that we talked about and what you can use outside of maybe what you've been hearing regarding AI with like ChatGPT, but moving into, maybe building your own apps and your own dashboards with a tool like Replit. David has introduced me to some of those, and it is really, really powerful stuff. So we're going to continue to develop our skills and judgment, but I can just see so much empowerment as we continue to build on accurate data and then making that data usable, or even the whole concept around licensing data and data sets that are, that proprietary data is accurate, usable, and it's got a nice lengthy history. So lots of great stuff. I expect we'll hear from David on this show again in the future. On behalf of Hayes and Gary, who couldn't make it today, I'm Justin Poulin. Thanks for listening to this episode of Power Supply.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Power Supply. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on your iPhone or Android. Simply search for Power Supply in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@powersupplymedia.net. We look forward to hearing from you.